We talked about the success of Marvel Rivals here in the last week or so, with over 10 million players in 3 days for this game. And Marvel Rivals is more or less a better version of not Concord, a better version of Overwatch. And this is a game that you've seen all sorts of clips from. It plays a little bit smoother than Overwatch. It has characters that everybody knows or at least can relate to or look at. It has sexy characters and such. And there's this article here of essentially the game director of Marvel Rivals throwing all sorts of shade at Concord. And I don't think he meant to do this, but Concord, if you recall, Mally, was the game that launched. It last 10 days, and then they shut it down after spending like half a billion dollars on development of this thing. This is a game that lasted a long time, and it was shut down after 10 days. So this is courtesy of Eurogamer. It says Marvel Rivals director says Sony flop Concord didn't offer any unique value for players. And I think that's kind of what happens. And this is definitely like a backhanded, just total shade being thrown. It's like, but he's 100% right. 100% right here. So the long and short of it was that he was on this podcast called the Video Gamer Podcast prior to Marvel Rivals release. And Sasser says Concord didn't bring anything original to the table, which would entice players to jump over from other popular shooters already on the market. He says there's a switching cost, the director said. I've already invested in Overwatch. I've got 15 skins for Pharah. I'm not going anywhere. And I do think this is 100% true. Once you've invested in a game, it's like there's an alternative. Yeah, but I've invested X amount of money in this or dollars, and I have these skins. Mally, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that first and foremost.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no, that's how it's been for years. That's why making a really good game is kind of like an accomplishment, because you're pulling other people from other games. We're going to, a lot of us still play games that are 10, 12, 15 years old, and they are very active games that a lot of people still play competitively online, all these things. So to act like, oh, we're going to just throw something new out there. Well, what's the draw? What makes it good?
Well, he said something that I think we can definitely agree on. And then he continued on, and I think this is where I read this and I was like, yo, this doesn't make any sense at all, because he continued on. And I think it really shows the disconnect between gamers, developers, media, and ultimately the customer, right? The people who are playing these games. He says, as a game developer, you're always worried until the audience has responded, the Marvel Rivals director continued. He says, the truth is that I don't think anyone can accurately predict this or the game industry would be radically different today. There's a lot of games that come out that people are like, it's going to do well, and then it flops. Or people come out and go, it's going to flop, and it succeeds amazingly. So I think it's really hard to tell ahead of time, and you're always worried about that. Yeah, and I saw that, and I was like, I feel like we've hit on the show 90% success rate, 95% as far as being able to look at a game and be like, that's going to fail or that's going to do well. I'd say the only one that we truly may have missed may have been the most recent one, which is Indiana Jones. And that game, on a Steam perspective, still isn't doing that great. It has yet to cross 15,000 concurrent players over on Steam, but it's on Game Pass. And that's been the big selling point for that. So we don't know the internal numbers, but from a revenue perspective, it may not be performing. But I think we've hit every single one of them, and that was kind of shocking to me that you hear these developers and saying that in particular. The idea like, well, we don't really know if our game's going to do well, but when you're investing hundreds of millions of dollars on creating a game, you should have a pretty fucking good idea that your game's going to do well. And I would think
if you don't have a good idea, maybe you should hire someone that does. Maybe that's him really exposing himself and being like, hey, I, as the person that's too involved, I'm too tied up in it. I can't see what's good. Okay, that happens sometimes. You're a little too zoomed in. Then get someone who can. Because if you're the guy that's making the game and you can't even tell what's going to be good, you shouldn't be making the games, period.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I put this out on X just a little bit ago. I said this quote is the problem. The video game industry is entirely out of touch with its audience/customer. These folks need to watch some podcast and read some news that aren't from traditional access media. Because I mean, you got to think these folks are they're reading Polygon, they're reading Kotaku, they're reading IGN, and they're not watching side scrollers. They're not getting news from that Park Place. They're not on X seeing what's happening because they've all migrated to Blue Sky, right? And I said, I've joked about the idea of starting a consulting company, and this statement further drives home the idea that it's needed. They are clueless. And I mean, we've talked about this for 6 months. The idea of starting up a consultancy firm just to go in and be like, yeah, that's fucking stupid. You know, that's never going to work. And, you know, whether it's normal man consultancy or side scrollers consultancy or whatever, I do think that there's an opportunity there to go into these game companies and be like, what are you doing? Like, that's really, really dumb. And just be as black and white as you possibly can with these folks, not go in and care about the feelings, and more or less take a flamethrower to these folks' games and just be brutally honest. And not really like, it just be a total chainsaw when you walk in, a buzzsaw, and just wreck it if it needs to be wrecked. Because when you're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars in one, expenditure, and number two, potential revenue, I think that it's worth paying somebody to come in and be that buzzsaw. I don't know. Mally, what do you think?
No, I think that a lot of companies do that, and then there's many more who should and they don't. And it's the, you know, you need the weightlifter. You need the guy that's going to be unafraid to be the asshole, right? Like a lot of entertainment people have that. It's like the face can't be the asshole, the CEO can't be the asshole. So you gotta hire a guy right underneath that's willing to do all the heavy lifting and all the hard cutting, because that's not easy. And a lot of times the CEO or the guy at the top doesn't like every single decision that's made. You don't have to like it, but sometimes it's necessary, and that's why you need that guy.
Maybe that's what we'll call it. Necessary consultancy or legacy, you know, necessary, I don't know, or maybe it was called Black Death consultancy. Just come in and just destroy the whole thing.
I feel like that could be a racist thing from the
Oh,
SJWs. How dare you?
Only you take it there.
It's already
Blabs.
clipped.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna find you now. Black Girl Gamer be like, he's a racist.
Yeah.
But I think you need to have an asshole. You need to have an asshole that comes in and really tells you like it is. And that's what's missing. We talk about toxic positivity in this industry all the time, where everything's great. Look at this. That's how you get to the point of, well, we don't really know if our game's going to be received well.
Yeah.
Just, you know.
No, I mean, I hate to be the girl that brings Disney into everything, but Roy and Walt are exactly what I'm talking about. Walt Disney was the dreamer, the creator, the I want to make this. And Roy was the, hold on, little bro, we can't afford that. Maybe you should redirect. Maybe you should rethink it. And Roy was, for a lack of better terms, for what we're describing now, the asshole. He was the one that was like, I'm going to keep it real so that my little brother's dreams can come true. And it was the balance that made that company succeed. And that company shouldn't have succeeded for many, many different times. It almost failed. They were on the brink of failure at multiple different times in the early days. But it was because, I believe, of the balance between Walt and these other people he would hire that really challenged him. That's like, yeah, you're going to have a successful company when you welcome opposing opinions.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing to see how many people in the industry just do this. They don't want to, they cover their ears and they say, no. Criticism is bad, because it always goes back to the fifis, my feelings, you know, I don't want to upset anybody. So